Why did I get into radio? Well, it was something I wanted to do when I was 17, and I needed something to do during my years at high school, these days known as secondary college. So I had to find somewhere to do work experience for 2 weeks. So I approached the local radio station called Casey Radio, and they were lucky. I was lucky enough to work with them for 2 weeks. But at the time, I didn't go on air. I was just a gopher boy. I basically worked in the office, but it wasn't until after I finished school in year 10 that I started my radio career. I was lucky enough to have a radio career that lasted 18 years, and in that 18 years I made up a disability directory recognising disabilities, non-for-profit disability organisations from Australia and overseas. And in that time, in 2005, I started that with my great mate and co-host David. For that 12 months, we researched over 100 websites, non-for-profit organisations, disability organisations, because we wanted to recognise people with disabilities, because it was basically the show was for everybody, but we wanted to recognise people with disabilities, because at the time when I was 17 there wasn't a show around for people with disabilities. This radio show that I'm talking about lasted for 18 years, and in 2008 I became a life member of Casey Radio for producing a disability radio show. I'm grateful that for doing the work that I have done, and I'm proud of the fact that I have done a radio show that was worldwide, because it was in 2005. The radio station that I worked at first went online in 2005, and so it was recognised overseas. And what we were actually doing was late night radio, and then breakfast radio show, doing a radio show. For example, in the United States, when we weren't on air at 9 p.m. till midnight, it was actually 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Friday morning. So what we were basically doing was breakfast radio plus late night radio in Australia. But all this was recognised over the internet. People were able to ring in and make requests. We had between, this is no joke, in 2009 I think it was, we had an average of 30 phone calls per every time that we did a radio show, which in radio terms it works out to be 300 listeners every Saturday night. I don't know about the stats now, but that's how many people that were listening in the 3 hours that we were producing the show. And I'll stop at this for now. But let me just say, to do disability radio is the best thing to do, because we had people with disabilities that were able to ring up a radio show and request their favourite songs, whatever. But it was, at the end of the day, it became a good outlet for people with disabilities, because there wasn't much radio for people with disabilities, and they didn't have many people with disabilities at the time when I was 17 to produce radio. So but I'm grateful that what I did for Casey Radio, because that was a big part of my life. So I'll finish this conversation for now. See ya. You may be listening to what I'm talking about, but the reason why I wanted to start this podcasting, because in recent months and recent years, I have been wanting to try to do a podcast, because I have been listening to a lot of different podcasts, and I've come across so many to get some ideas on how to do a podcast. I'm also looking at YouTube's and learning that way. Plus, I'm learning to use podcasting programs, and I'm using my different microphone. But the reason why I wanted to do a podcast is because podcasting is very similar to radio, but it's done on a smaller scale. Where podcasting, you can talk about all different topics, and but with radio you can do whatever. You can make it into a podcast, or you can record stuff live, which is what we want to try and do: record stuff live and make it sound as live as possible, so it doesn't sound like we are constantly reading off bits of paper. And specifically, when recording stuff unrehearsed, it comes across a lot better. So that's the reason why I wanted to try doing a podcast. I have a new microphone, so I am constantly using that one, using the new mic, and I want to learn a new skill such as podcasting, because it seems to me that everyone in radio and in any small media, everyone is doing a podcast. And so what radios tend to do is do their radio show, and then they make a smaller version, and then make it into a podcast by just producing their favourite parts of the radio show. And it seems that there's a lot of people these days are listening to podcasts as they walk down the street or whatever. It is just a small media, so people can listen to radio without ads and just listen to their favourite part. So I'm going to finish this podcast for now, and hope you enjoy this podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, give us a like on YouTube.